So, have you ever looked around and wondered how some people just seem to glide through everything, navigating tricky situations, always somehow landing on top?
Yeah, it makes you think, doesn't it?
Exactly. Or, like, what if real power isn't about being the loudest or the strongest? What if it's something, well, quieter, more strategic?
Uh-huh.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power.
A pretty controversial book for some.
It definitely is, but it's more than just, a list. It pulls together wisdom from, wow, over 3,000 years.
Yeah, figures like Sun Tzu, Machiavelli.
Talleyrand, even famous con artists like Yellow Kid Weil, quite the
He
mix.
really is.
So our mission here is to unpack some of the maybe surprising ideas and stories from it, give you a shortcut to understanding these hidden currents of power. We'll try to keep it interesting, maybe even crack a smile.
Right.
But just to be clear, this isn't about saying go do this stuff. It's about understanding the patterns,
Right.
human nature. Okay, let's get into it.
Absolutely. And what's so fascinating, I think, is how these principles, because they are timeless, they really push you to question assumptions, to look at behavior from different angles. Greene essentially collected all this knowledge on what he calls the arts of indirection.
Arts of indirection, I like that.
Yeah, found in places from like ancient China all the way to Renaissance Italy. It suggests there's this kind of core essence to power dynamics that maybe we haven't fully grasped.
So it's not just what people do.
Exactly. It's
No.
trying to understand why it matters, the bigger picture, and how we might see these same patterns playing out today, in our own lives around the world.
Okay.
We'll be looking at how different figures throughout history grabbed attention, how they handled relationships, friends and enemies, which is interesting,
Oh, yeah?
how they hid what they were really after, and even used being unpredictable as a tool.
Okay, that unpredictability one sounds intriguing. But let's start with attention. I was really struck by Law 6, court attention at all cost. It feels so opposite to how we think we should act now, right? Like, be humble.
Totally. It feels counterintuitive. But Greene's point is all about perception. He basically says everything is judged by its appearance. What is unseen counts for nothing.
So the truth is what people see, not necessarily what is.
Pretty much. So if you want influence, you can't blend in. You need to stand out, seem, bigger, more colorful, more mysterious than everyone else who's playing it safe.
Like making yourself memorable.
Exactly. Think about Julius Caesar. He was apparently a master of PR, basically. He wore these amazing purple robes.
Purple, wow.
Yeah, even used a laurel wreath, partly to hide that he was going bald, but it also became iconic. He knew how to create drama, make big announcements, always thinking about how people saw him. It wasn't accidental. It was like a performance.
Right, orchestrating your own presence. But hang on, can't that backfire, being too visible? Because that brings us to another law. Law 1, never outshine the master. That seems like a direct contradiction almost.
It is a balancing act, for sure. Being too visible too often can make you seem common. That links into Law 16 as well. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Sometimes stepping back makes people appreciate you more.
Creates scarcity.
Exactly. Value through scarcity.
Yeah.
But with Law 1, the danger is if you show off your talents too much, you might make your boss, or whoever's above you, feel insecure. Or scared, even.
So the advice is, make your superiors look better than they are.
If you want to rise, yeah. Help them shine, and you benefit indirectly. It's about managing their ego, basically.
Wow, that's delicate. We usually think ambition means shouting about your skills, right? But this law says maybe, dial it back. The story of Fouquet, Louis XIV's finance minister, really hits this home.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic example.
He throws this unbelievably extravagant party, invites all the top nobles, the smartest people, commissions special music, food. I mean, he must have thought he was showing the king how capable he was.
And he was showing him something, just not what he intended. Instead of impressing Louis XIV, it highlighted Fouquet's own wealth, his own connections, his own brilliance, and Louis, well, he felt threatened.
He was the Sun King, right? He didn't want competition.
Exactly. An absolute monarch needs to feel absolutely superior. Any display that dimmed his own light, even slightly, was seen as a challenge. So what happened? Poof, Fouquet's out, replaced by the much less flashy Colbert.
Ouch. A stark reminder, don't make the boss feel insecure.
It really is. A chilling lesson, like you said.
Okay, so that leads us to relationships, which you mentioned. Law 2 is another one that just jumps out. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. I mean, that sounds so cynical.
It does sound cynical on the surface, yeah.
Yeah.
But Greene frames it more as Brutal pragmatism.
Pragmatism, okay.
He argues friends get envious easily. They might feel entitled because you're friends, and then they can turn on you faster.
Because familiarity breeds contempt, sort of?
Kind of, or it just breeds expectation and resentment. Whereas a former enemy, if you bring them into your circle, well, they might actually be more loyal because they have something to prove. Their loyalty isn't based on fuzzy feelings, it's strategic.
That is really counterintuitive. So it's not just about who you like, it's about managing risk and, well, utility.
Pretty much. Look at Michael III, the Byzantine emperor. His best friend was this guy, Basilius.
Okay.
Michael promotes him, gives him tons of power, even though Basilius didn't really have the background for it. But Basilius gets greedy, starts whispering poison in Michael's ear about his uncle Bardas.
Oh, boy.
Leads to Bardas getting murdered. And then guess what? Eventually, Basilius turns on Michael himself, kills him.
Wow. So the friend became the ultimate betrayer.
Exactly. It makes you think of that Voltaire quote, right? Lord, protect me from my friends. I can take care of my enemies.
Yeah, definitely hits different after that story.
It's a tough look at the darker side of human nature, for sure. And on the flip side, if you do have enemies, Greene's advice in Law 15 is just as stark. Crush your enemy. Totally.
Totally. No half measures.
No half measures. His logic is, if you leave even one ember glowing, it could eventually burst back into flame.
Oh.
Stopping halfway, he argues, causes more problems in the long run than just finishing the job.
That sounds incredibly harsh. Is the idea that this prevents future problems, like it ensures stability, or is it just about holding on to power right now?
Well, within the book's logic, it's presented as a strategic necessity. Take Empress Wu in China.
Right?
She's apparently ruthless. Stories say she even poisoned her own niece, maybe even her son, to eliminate rivals and secure her throne. No loose ends.
Good grief.
Sun Tzu said something similar, basically. Your enemies want you gone, so any mercy you show might just encourage them to try again later. It's a kind of cold, hard logic focused on self-preservation, especially when the stakes are really high.
It forces you to think about whether sometimes, half measures are more dangerous.
It's definitely a provocative thought.
Okay, so we've talked about getting attention, managing friends, dealing with enemies. But what if the real power move is about what you don't show, what you hide?
Ah, yes. Deception and misdirection.
Because, like Greene suggests, maybe the strongest play is the one nobody anticipates. Which brings us right to Law 3, conceal your intentions.
Precisely. Keep people guessing. Off balance. If they have no idea what you're really aiming for, how can they possibly defend against it?
And people tend to just believe what they see on the surface.
That's the human tendency, Greene argues. We trust appearances. So you can dangle a false goal or seem to want one thing while secretly working towards something else entirely. Bismarck is a great example.
Okay, Bismarck.
Back in 1850, to kind of climb the ladder without wrecking his career, he publicly supported a war he actually hated, said things completely against his real beliefs.
Just to fit in or seem loyal?
Exactly. Fooled pretty much everyone. This perceived stance got him a minister position, and from there, he eventually became prime minister and achieved his actual long-term goals. Masterful deception, really.
It's like psychological judo or something, using their assumptions against them.
Kinda, yeah. And sometimes that deception can be, well, almost artistic. Law 12 talks about using selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim.
Selective honesty. So a little bit of truth makes the bigger lie believable.
That's the idea. One genuinely honest-seeming move or a timely gift like a Trojan horse can make someone lower their guard completely.
Okay, give me an example.
Count Victor Lustig, infamous con man. He apparently approached Al Capone. Yes, that Al Capone.
Bold move.
Very. Offered to double $50,000 for him. Capone gives him the cash. Lustig just sticks it in a safe deposit box for 2 months.
Does nothing.
Nothing. Then goes back to Capone, looking all dejected, says, "Sorry, Al, the scheme failed. Here's your money back."
Oh.
Capone was apparently so impressed by this honesty, getting his original stake back from a con man, that he actually gave Lustig $5,000 as a reward. Lustig had totally disarmed him with that single act.
And then presumably tried a bigger con later.
That was the implication, yeah. Lustig understood, maybe like P.T. Barnum, who even wrote about his own humbugs, that sometimes people want to be fooled, or at least they're very willing to trust appearances.
That's fascinating. The idea that we're almost wired to accept the surface level.
Seems to be a recurring theme.
And speaking of keeping people off balance, this ties right into Law 17, the unpredictability one you mentioned earlier. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability.
Yes, a very powerful tool. See, people are creatures of habit, right? predictability makes us feel safe, feel like we have some control.
Sure.
So if you deliberately act erratically, unpredictably, it throws people off, it makes them anxious, wears them out, trying to figure you out.
Yeah.
And yeah, taken to an extreme, Greene says it can intimidate, even terrorize.
You see that in competitions, definitely. Like Bobby Fischer against Boris Spassky in the 72 chess championship.
Oh, the Reykjavik match. Perfect example.
Fischer's behavior was just bizarre, complaining about the cameras, the chairs, showing up late, making moves that looked like blunders.
Totally erratic.
And it completely psyched Spassky out. Even when Fischer made a normal move, Spassky was looking for the trick, the hidden trap, because Fischer had cultivated this air of dangerous unpredictability.
He controlled the psychological rhythm of the game by breaking it. Spassky couldn't handle it. It shows how just varying your pattern, keeping opponents guessing, can be a huge advantage.
It really does. It pulls together a lot of these threads: appearance, psychology, timing. It's not just about what you do, but how and when.
Exactly. It's about mastering those subtle dynamics.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what does all this mean for you listening in? We've gone through some of Robert Greene's pretty challenging ideas.
Definitely chill.
And we've seen how power, as he describes it, often works subtly. It's not always about the big, obvious moves, but more about mastering appearances, psychology, strategy, this whole dance of what's seen and what's hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you've picked up some insights, maybe had a few aha moments. And look, even if you'd never dream of using these tactics yourself,
Which is probably most people.
right, understanding these dynamics can still give you, a sharper lens for seeing why people do what they do, understanding the complex web of interactions around us.
Absolutely. And if we try to connect this back to the bigger picture, thinking about all these historical examples and strategies, it does raise a pretty big question for all of us, doesn't it?
Which is?
Well, Greene uses this old fable, the owl who was gone.
Mm-hmm.
The takeaway is stark. You can fool too many of the people, too much of the time. So what does that stark reality tell us about our own judgment, our own discernment? When we look at the world, what appearances do we choose to trust? Which ones should we maybe question a bit more?
That's definitely something to chew on.
It really is. In a world so full of managed appearances and influence, thinking about what we trust and why, that's a question worth pondering long after this deep dive is over.